I'm your host, Marv Curtis. And today I'm honored to welcome Matthew from Texas. He's here to share his insights that might help you on your path and tell a little bit about the struggles and successes that he's had. Welcome, Matthew. How are you doing today?
Hey, thank you. I'm doing good. Doing good. How about yourself?
Not bad, thank you. Can you share a little bit about yourself and what led you to this point in your healing journey?
Yeah. Uh, I'm currently transitioning right now to IT as far as my career,
Yep.
and what led me to this particular point in my healing journey is being aware, understanding that there is a thing called just going through a cycle of narcissistic abuse or trauma bond. Uh, First and foremost, what led me to this particular point is fully educating myself on this particular thing that's a lot of people is not aware of. And it can happen. It can happen to men. It can happen to women. And it can also get the best of you or it can get the worst of you. Um, but inside my journey, I know everybody is different. What led me to this is being self-aware, of the I'm not gonna say illness, I'm not gonna say disorder, but just a way of life. Some people they have this mindset of, controlling, being manipulative, and gaslighting a lot of people, and also just having things their way. I mean, because it's sometimes it's not their own personal uh problem. I mean, it's family bond, you know, from generations to generations, So what got me to this point is actually being more aware, educating myself fully, and just trying to bring more awareness to, other people.
Great. That's nice to know. Have you had other experiences with narcissism or controlling or neglect prior to this relationship that you're getting out of?
So come to find out, and I'm just gonna give you a backstory on how I found out, this particular disorder
Yeah.
for NPD and BPD. I didn't know nothing about it. Right. So me personally, I'm a man. I feel like I'm the strongest guy you can be around. Really nothing bothers me. I've been married before, and I got 2 kids, 2 little girls. So I'm the typical guy who pretty much, is not afraid to go out and date and do things and just be around people, right? So one time in my life, I experienced my mother dating someone, right? And I'm thinking this your typical relationship. They got engaged, her and this guy. And she used to always call, I used to check on her and be like, hey, how you doing? What's going on, on a day-to-day basis. And she used to always be feeling certain type of ways about this guy. And it kind of made me frustrated and upset, but she's grown. She's way above her age and knowing like what she want out of life and what she don't. But at the same time, too, she's an empathetic person, a real, real empathetic person. She
Uh,
always caring for other people. She have 6 kids, so she's a nurturer by heart. And just me checking on her and seeing how she's doing, I noticed that she was kind of depressed some days. And I, for one, I wasn't thinking that it was super serious to the point where she wasn't doing anything some days. She wasn't trying to get out the house. She was just laying around so much, dealing with this guy, and I'm like, "Hey, you should go out and get some air, go touch some grass or something." I'm just trying to give her some advice. And little did I know, I didn't know that she was going through, her trauma bond at the time. So, long story short, um, she came across something on YouTube one day while she was laying down, going through her moment, and this was like a stretch for 8 months, and I literally mean like 8 months from the time that I first talked to her and noticed that she was, like, going through a depression stage, dealing with this guy, um, to and 8 months afterwards, she still was going through, a certain phase, and she came across something on YouTube, and for some odd reason, it dawned on her. She called me one day. She was like, "Hey, you know what I'm actually going through?" She said, I've been dealing with a narcissistic guy."
Mm.
And I'm like, What do you mean? Like, do you sense that it was something wrong with him? Like, did he have an illness? Like, was he mentally ill or something?" She said, "Well, I don't think it was just more of just being mentally ill. It's just with his upbringing. I noticed from his family, I noticed the things that he was doing with certain women. He used to have 2 phones, and he used to have these women calling him and all this other extra stuff. So that's what they call the supply, from what I understand. He has multiple women calling him while we was out on dates, and she was with this guy for years.
Wow.
But I'm talking about years. So she was saying that he used to always try to control things and whatever the case may be. And I met the guy one day when I was in Memphis. They visit Memphis, and I came down to Memphis too from Birmingham. Um, and I met him. And during that time when that we met up with each other, it was a time where I was trying to go to a certain restaurant, but he wasn't trying to go because he felt like I was actually taking away my mother's attention from him,
Mhm.
which is kind of weird. I didn't see it that way at that time, but my mother noticed it too. And and I me not being aware of this disorder. Now, when she seen this YouTube video, instantly she got aware because every single thing that she was going through in her relationship with this guy, they was mentioning inside this YouTube video that she was looking at on her TV.
Mm.
So she kept on looking at YouTube videos every single day, and she was just making herself more aware of it. And that actually kind of brought her more awareness to what she was going through, and it uplifted her a little bit more. So she started kind of like helping herself out to get out that trauma bond. Right.
Nice.
So long story short, um, I was in a marriage when I was 22. I got married. I'm 31 now, and in my marriage, I decided to file my divorce, from my ex-wife. At the time, I had one child, and come to find out, I had another child by her before we ended up divorcing. And just going through my marriage, I was, you know, we was pretty much childhood lovers. We knew each other from when we was in high school, and we grew up around each other. So we kind of felt like we knew each other for a moment. But after the marriage, I started dating, and it's a typical guy, having fun and really not paying attention to anything and not taking anything serious because I just got out of marriage. But when it was time for me to actually settle down a little bit, I didn't take that time for me. And this is just me being person. I didn't take that time for me to kind of like take a step back and get to know myself because I always been around someone else. Right. So I
Mhm.
came across a relationship one day, and um, instantly, I was at a lounge, wasn't trying to meet nobody, just to myself, having a drink. Came across this female, and we instantly just hit it just like that. And everything was clicking. She was the same zodiac sign as me. Um, Pretty much same personality. Her family was like military background, just like mine. Um, and everything just seemed like it was together, you know. And for some odd reason, at that time, I was trying to build myself, right? Buy a house. So I decided to get an apartment, not have any furniture, work for a little bit, save some money, pay off some debt, do some things that I needed to do to try to do what I needed to do for my house. And long story short, it came a time where I was depending on her because my lease was up from my apartment, and she decided to say, "Hey, you want to come stay with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, it may make sense." I get to save some money, just give her a little money, while they build my house at that time. And this is like a month and a half after we knew each other from that bar. After we
Pretty fast.
crossed each other, it's pretty fast. And I was like, you know what? That might make sense, to do that. So I end up doing it. And we stayed with each other. When I first got to her home, I noticed that she had like some friends living with her at first. They came from Florida and she had a friend living with her. And but her friend was actually about to get ready to go a month after I came there. So long story short, we knew each other for a total of like 6 or 7 months, from like February to November. But while I was with her, I started seeing a lot of things that, I was noticing. Because when you stand with someone, it's different when you dating someone outside of your house, when you're
Sure.
dating someone outside of the area. But when you stand with someone, you can't help but to see certain tendencies. You can't help but to see their flaws, their daily activities and what they're doing, the communication, the disagreements. Sometimes you're not going to want to do things that they want to do. Sometimes they're not going to do things that you want to do. So it brings upon certain conflicts, right? And also the compromise. It's a good compromising thing if it actually goes well with your communication. But in this particular situation, I started noticing that she was having like certain temper tantrums, when I was telling her, "Nah, I don't want to do that," or "I don't want to, you know, go to this certain place," or "I don't want to, buy this certain thing for the home." And at that time, we was pretty much like we was locked in, like we was about to get in a real serious marriage. So everything was just moving so fast. It was just moving so fast. And at that time, I'm like, this probably the one. But as I was going through the motion of staying with this woman, luckily, by my mother knowing what's going on from her situation, her experience, she was always telling me, she was like, "Hey, I got to tell you something." She's like, "I don't want you to, you know, tell nobody else or the person who you with." She said, "Shaq, but I'm gonna start message." She said, you're going through a trauma bond. You're going through the cycle of what they call the narcissistic person." That's like, "Nah, I don't want to hear that." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't want to hear that. I'm good. I know my own. Nobody manipulate me or gaslight me and whatever the case may be." I'm like, "Nah, you know."
Hold on for just a minute. So your mom's telling you this could be a narcissistic person, and you're saying, "I don't want to hear that." Was there any part of you, like your intuition or that little voice telling you there's a problem here and you were ignoring it, or you heard nothing?
No, I heard, and I listened to my mother, and I have so much respect for her. I listened to it and understood exactly what she was going through. But so here's where it dawned on me. Here's where I realized I was actually going through it, just like she was saying.
Right.
So 2 months after I got in the house, we had a disagreement. It was a real serious disagreement, right? And I kid you not, never seen this in my life. Uh, uh, the female she had a temper tantrum. It was like a raging temper tantrum. You can see her eye was just popping out of her face, and her eyes was getting red. And I'm like, hold on, that's something ain't right. So I'm literally looking at this, I'm like, "Oh yeah, something wrong." So I ended up packing my bags. I was like, "Yeah, this not it. This not normal."
Yeah.
She was hitting the wall and stuff like that. I said, "Okay, well," at that time, I'm like, "Nah, I don't want to be around looking like that." Because I really don't know you. In the back of my head, I'm like, I don't know you for real, truly. So at any time, I told her, I said, "At any time, I will be leaving if you come down to it." So when I seen that, pack my bags. And while I was packing my bags, put my stuff in the car, she was just going through this emotional breakdown. Like, oh, don't leave me. No, 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 no. And she instantly said something that caught my attention. She said, "You're gonna be just like all the other guys."
Oh,
I said, "She's gonna be just like all the other guys leaving now." And it dawned on me, it was like, okay, well, what does she mean by that?
yeah.
And it got me curious because if guys was doing that, it's a reason why they was doing it. Not to put it towards judge anybody from their past, because we all meet people at different points or stages of their life. But at the same time, too, it's a reason why somebody did that. And
Exactly.
I noticed it. Right. So long story short, after we had the talk, and we had a real serious talk and a conversation, and she called her mom. Before I even actually knew her mother was okay with me moving into the house with her at that early notice. And I'm like, okay, all right, me coming up from where I'm from, mothers don't usually tend to do that. No, they don't let anybody and everybody around, your area so quickly, you don't know them.
Another red flag.
That's another red flag. So I asked her, I said, um, are, are you okay with being in this house if you really don't know me? I could be anybody. She had a daughter too that stayed with us. And I could be anybody. I said, are you okay with it? She's like, I seem like a good guy. Like, no, I'm okay with it. And I was like, well, it's like, okay, well, it's just for the time being, you know, and we just friends, whatever the case may be. So that was another red flag. Like, it's moving so fast.
Yeah.
And, um, and I thought about it. I said, when she called me back to the conversation I had with my mother, she said, after you going through what I call narcissistic trauma bond, saying you basically in your first stage. This is the exact same word she told me. She said, you in your first stage, the stage of where she love on you. She's buying, doing certain things for you. Me personally, I'm an empathetic person too, so I do certain things too. I buy flowers for a woman every day. Every Friday, I used to buy flowers, put flowers in them, just to make her day. When it came out on her birthday, I took on a, boat cruise because she loved the water, whatever the case may be. So this was around the time that we started getting to know each other. Our birthday was around the same time. So we were just taking trips. She took me on a trip to uh this little nature cabin because I love being in nature. So that's what we call the love bombing stage. They try to mirror everything that you of your liking, right?
Yeah.
So now, since my mother had that conversation, back to that conversation, notice something. I thought about it. I said, well, maybe it makes sense. Because she's not even inside this home where I'm at, but she can see from a distance what's going on. Mothers, it's something about a mother intuition, man. Yeah.
Yeah. They know.
It's something about it. We may not see it as men, we may not see it, so soon, but a mother, they can see it from a mile away. And that's what got my attention to it. So as I was going through my process of what they call that, idolizing, um,
Idealizing.
idealizing. Okay, thank you. And and I noticed it. I looked into some YouTube videos. I looked in, looking up narcissistic abuse, looked up trauma bonds, and truth be told, every single thing that I was going through during that time was pretty much popping up inside of every article, every video, every newsletter when it came down to it. So I said either two things is either I'm gonna stay in the situation that I'm in, or I'm gonna leave. I kid you not. I made a decision to leave finally, and that's when I went through the discard phase. Is what
Big
they call it.
shift. Yeah.
So going through a discard phase, pretty much the most confusing thing that I ever did in my life. And I know that it's a reason why certain people do certain things. It's because of that. So when I was going through my discard phases, I did what you didn't supposed to do. I let her know that I was actually finna get rid of Lee. And
Trouble.
at that time, you know, we was gonna move into the house that I built. And something in my heart, something in my spirit was telling me, it said, no, don't let her come in the house. Don't let her move into the house. Moving so fast. We only knew each other for a couple months. She's already trying to move into the house that I built. Right? So I called her one day, mother in the car. And at this point, I'm getting ready to move my furniture, from one city to another city. And it's funny how this happened. So while she was on the phone, she was around her friend and her mother, her closest friend and her mother. And I instantly just broke the news to her. I was like, hey, I'm not emotionally attracted, in this situation no more. So I think it'll be best if we do not move in with each other. Oh my God. Firecracker. I'm talking about explosion. It was the worst rage and trauma, temper tantrum that I've seen from a person over the phone. I'm talking about it was bad. So my mother was in the car and I had her on Bluetooth. And she was just going off all the cuss words. I'm just letting her talk because my mother sitting right next to me. And she was shocked. She was like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
She didn't know that it's funny. She didn't know that she was inside the car when she was doing it for one. So what they don't like is when they get exposed.
Exactly.
They don't like, a narcissistic person do not like being exposed, showing their true colors. Now, most of the time, their closest friends and family, they know something is not right. They know that something is pretty much off by the personality. But what they do is, I tend to find out, and this is true, what they do is they tend to still influence it, still go with it. They don't actually tell them, hey, go get checked, or, you should do something with yourself, take care of yourself, whatever the case may be.
They kind of
They try to protect them, right? So at this moment, all three of them is on the other side of the phone. I'm in the car driving. I have my mother on the side in the passenger seat, and she didn't know she was on Bluetooth speaker. So my mother heard everything she said. And when she ended her argument, her big fuss, she said, well, I guess I can call your mother. I'll call your mother and tell her how you treating me, and all this other extra stuff, saying that you don't want to move in with each other. I said, well, you can. She's right here sitting next to me. She said, hey, what is going on? But she instantly got quiet. She shocked, surprised.
Yeah.
That's the exposure, right? So as I was looking into the information I was looking into, that was a part of what they did not want you to do. They did not want you to expose them. They did not want other people to see who they truly are. And I had to take that. I had to take that in as of I'm actually going through what I'm going through. So, long story short, when I did that, that's when all hell broke loose. At that point, that's when I knew I was going through the discard phase.
Right.
And as we was getting our things, packing our stuff up and, moving, the places where we were trying to go to, she had to actually get another apartment. So she wasn't coming to my house. She had to go and get an apartment. And at that time, she wasn't able to get an apartment. So her family kind of helped her out in doing it because she just got a new job in the area where we at. So long story short, this is probably the most confusing thing that I've been through in my life because, I'm a man, I really don't get into a lot of, she's cheating or she's doing all this other extra stuff. But at this point, I knew it was something wrong. So as I was talking to her a couple of days, I seen and I sensed, I had a certain discernment that something went right. And come to find out, the gym that we was going through, she was actually seeing the guy at the gym that we was going to.
There you go.
So, and I just charged it to the game. It is what it is. But as I was going through that phase, I was also noticing that she was doing the same thing with this guy from a distance. That's So what it was is that the likings, hobbies of what one person do, they try to mirror it so they can reel you in, right? So I started noticing it like when she started liking instruments, when she started liking, all this other extra stuff. So she was basically prepping herself to be
Yeah.
to mirror the next person.
Keeping one in the wings. So let's
Yeah.
just kind of ask this question. If you could go back and give your own self one piece of advice, especially during the hardest moments, what would your advice to yourself be?
Trust your instincts. Trust your gut instinct.
Yeah.
Trust your gut instinct is when you notice something is wrong, something is not right, trust your instincts and believe it and leave.
Yeah.
Reason why is because I did it 3 times. I'm gonna be honest with you. One, I felt like it was working out for me as far as my house development and the progress that I was going through to be with her inside the house. But I noticed that something was off, and I almost left 3 times. I can count. It was 3 times.
Mm.
And they say that average person it takes them up to 7 times.
Yeah. You lucked out. You only had 3.
Yeah. So, and it's because, and I'm saying this now, it's because my mother brought more awareness to it.
Yeah. She was your angel of mercy.
I have to actually give her props. It's because she brought that to my attention. And sometimes when you're going through the phase and when you're going through those type of relationships, when people even mention something like that, you don't even want to believe them.
No.
You be so caught up in the glamour and, the feelings of, oh, this is definitely the one. This is my soulmate,
Exactly.
not knowing that they actually prepped you and they basically psychologically knew how to actually build you up to get to that point.
Yeah. They knew what they were doing.
Right. So by the grace of God and, having that support, with my mother and, and people around me is, and actually having the how do you say it, just having the intentions on knowing and getting to learn and educate myself more on it, the disability is,
So
it's my reason.
let's look forward and think there are probably people listening to this recording or will be listening to this recording about your story and your experience. And you've given advice to yourself to trust your instincts. Is there one message you'd leave for people who are listening and might be in a similar situation? What message would you give them?
My message, first and foremost, is never reject something that's outside of your norm. And the reason why I'm saying this is because when you in that particular relationship or when you in that particular trauma bond, you may not be aware. You may be going through the excitement. You may be going through the downs, the ups of it, the fun and the bad times of it. Just thinking it's a typical relationship. And that's your norm. That's the norm that I mean by saying that's your typical relationship. You in imagining that's your typical relationship. So you in the norm of it.
Yeah.
Never reject something outside of the norm. It's because if someone actually tells you, and there are signs, it's always signs. You just got to be aware of it. If someone actually makes it aware of, hey, I don't like that person, or sometimes you have family members and friends like, yeah, something's not right with that person. There's a reason why people are seeing things on the outside in. Now, you may not want to take anybody's opinion. You don't have to, but take in consideration on why. Because if if you look outside the norm of what you're doing, most of the time you get to expand your mindset, your perspective on things.
Yeah.
Me, I'm spiritual, and and I always pray for God to give me a different perspective on every situation of my life. And once you see a different perspective on things, that lets you know that you're heading in the right directions on gaining more awareness. Is if you look outside the norm of what you're in, it'll make it easy for you to recognize the reality of it. And I had to do that myself. And sometimes it's hard for people.
You know,
It's hard on you.
well, you've been very generous with your time and telling us this personal story, Matthew. I really appreciate it. And, if I were to look back on this conversation and say, the thing that really stands out for me is trust yourself, trust your gut. I think that makes so much sense. And I really appreciate you taking time to share that with us. And for those who are listening, if this episode resonates with you, or you've got a story that you'd like to share, check in with me. I'm at marvcurtiscoaching.com. Love to hear from you. Maybe we can work together. Well, thanks again, Matthew. Appreciate all your work.
Thank you, Marv. And continue to bring more awareness to it, man.